Is the sky falling in San Francisco? Well, it might be because we just got breaking news out of Niners HQ in Santa Clara, California, as starting quarterback Brock Purdy alongside Nick Bosa and Charvarius Ward have been ruled out for Sunday's game against the Green Bay Packers. If things couldn't get worse for San Francisco, they're already 5-5 coming into this game, currently 31% odds of making the NFL playoffs. If they win this game, 46% chance to win. And if they lose this game, a 17% chance they make the playoffs. In a year where they lost the Super Bowl last season, you hope this was the bounce back, the get right, hey, climb back up the mountain and undo the wrong that was last February. It feels like this season has been a catastrophe dating back to February, leading all the way up to this point in time. Now, Kyle Shanahan did say that he doesn't believe the injury is long-term. At least that's the hope right now. But there was concerns and issues that Brock Purdy's shoulder did not see an increase, I guess you can say, in health, to put it that way. John Lynch spoke on KNBR this morning, said that the MRI came back relatively clear. He didn't dive too much into that. So it felt like this morning we were trending towards Brock Purdy playing this Sunday, whereas as of now, 2:20 p.m. on the West Coast, Brock Purdy's not going to play. And starting in his place is going to be backup quarterback Brandon Allen, not Joshua Dobbs, who I think is a better option to play in this game, but it's going to be Brandon Allen. Now, the questions are, can Brandon Allen fill Brock Purdy's shoes? This is a must-win game. This is a playoff game in November in Lambeau and Green Bay. You have to win this football game. If you lose this game, you're 5-6. And if teams like the Cardinals beat the Seahawks and the Rams somehow beat the Philadelphia Eagles, while your odds aren't zero, just instead of missing the playoffs, they go pretty high, and you really are finding yourselves needing a lot of help to make the playoffs this year. But Brandon Allen, in his entire career as a starter, is 2-7 with stints with the Broncos and the Cincinnati Bengals. He played exactly zero, nada, zilch snaps last year for San Francisco. And this season, he has played one snap. That was a kneel down in week 1 against the New York Jets. Over his entire career, Brandon Allen has a 56.7 completion percentage. In his biggest and best game, it was in 2020, which, yikes, that was the year Joe Burrow got injured and missed a lot of time with the Bengals. He went 29 for 37, 371 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 37-31 win against the Houston Texans. The very next week, he went 6 for 28, 48 yards and 2 interceptions. And it's been literally 749 days since Brandon Allen has thrown a meaningful pass in the NFL. When you talk about disaster, when you hear people say, season's over, pack it in, call it a night, ding dong, it's over, right? Ding dong, the witch is dead. This is what happens. This is because you play down to your opponents all year long. It's led to this, that now you're starting quarterback who you desperately need to be healthy and play in a game like this that you have to win. He's not going to play. No Charvarius Ward, no Nick Bosa. It's going to be a getting back into the fray, Christian McCaffrey, a backup quarterback, and Brandon Allen, and a bunch of guys playing under par this year in Deebo Samuel, Ricky Pearsall, first-round pick. You got George Kittle back. That's the good news, but ultimately, there really isn't many positive things coming out of Santa Clara in 2024. It's been a bad year, a down year, a disaster. People are calling for Kyle Shanahan's head, which is insane to me, but they're doing that. This is a complete, this is 2020 all over again, minus COVID. Ayuk's done for the season. Bosa's injured. Now Purdy's injured. Kittle's been hurt sometimes this year. Deebo Samuel's been hurt sometimes this year. Pearsall got shot early in the year. All of this. Greenlaw hasn't played a single snap all year. Hufunga's hurt again. This feels like 2020 all over again, which, funny enough, they lost the Super Bowl the previous year. It's a disaster, though. This is terrible for the San Francisco 49ers. If I had to give them an odds to win, they're no longer going to be 2.5 point underdogs. They're going to be 10 point underdogs in this game. I have a hard time believing that, like, honestly, Kawachipto says here, why even play Trent Williams? Why even toss him out there? In a game where I said yesterday, previewing the game, hey, if Brock Purdy plays, San Francisco has an opportunity to win this football game. This is going to be close towards the end. This could be a game where you fight, and maybe at the end of the week, you're in first place in the NFC West again. Now it feels like there's no chance that happens. It honestly feels like it's going to be like the NFC Championship game in 2022, where it's just a bunch of CMC because there's no quarterbacks out there and Brock can't throw. Again, it doesn't sound like the game plan's going to change too much. Brandon Allen's been quarterback 2 all year long. You're going to have your stars step up. Debo, got to step up. Kittle, got to step up. The Niners are not going to force the ball downfield. It'll be all in the numbers, which gives Green Bay a very easy game plan to work with. You're going to have to get tricky and smart. You want to hear Shanahan get in his bag and be creative. This is the time to do so. Yep, you don't have Brock Purdy. Now you lean ever more on your stars and your genius head coach and play caller. That is Kyle Shanahan. I want to see end arounds. I want to see reverses. I want to see them play smash mouth football where it's like, hey, we have to win in spite of Brandon Allen this week. Now, what can Brandon Allen do for you? He's a fine quarterback. He's not very good. He's a backup quarterback for a reason. You can argue on some teams he's quarterback 3. I can argue on this team he should be quarterback 3 with Joshua Dobbs there. I would play Joshua Dobbs. That's not the plan right now. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, but I'm not Kyle Shanahan. That said, this is going to be from what I thought would be Brock can pass the football. Jair Alexander's out for the Packers. Adrian Cooper's out for the Packers. And their pass rush isn't very good out there in Green Bay. They had a hard time getting pressure against Caleb Williams and the Bears' terrible offensive line. The Niners, for as bad as they've been up front, are better than Chicago has been this year. But this is going to be a heavy CMC, heavy Jordan Mason and Isaac Guerendo game. Honestly, put all 3 of them suckers on the field at the exact same time. I want to see wildcat formations. I want to see Shanahan doing everything crazy and getting this team geared up, ready to go. But I think, for all the talk of Brock isn't worth $65 million, the conversation in regarding to do you pay him, do you not pay him, I think, we are in for potentially one of the worst games all year. Now, the Packers can play down to you. The Niners are not out of this game, right? It feels bleak because it is. It feels like the season's over with and they're going to be 5-6. And we're going to be sitting here saying, wow, they're 2 games behind the Cardinals in the NFC West. They don't have tiebreakers over Seattle. They have the Bills next week. There's a real conversation. This team is 5-7 in 2 weeks' time. And we're all sitting back like, that's what happens when you don't perform early on in the year. When you let games against the Rams and the Cardinals slip by, you lose like to Seattle last week. Like, had you beat Seattle last week, you can afford to lose a game like this, right? But this is their own doing, their own creation. And now, by not their own creation, Brock Purdy's injured. Thankfully, it doesn't seem like it's long-term. Feels like it'll be a week, maybe 2. Maybe get him out of the cold weather and out of Buffalo and out of Lambeau. Hopefully it doesn't snow this Sunday. But now you kind of want it to snow. Now you kind of want it to be ugly and disgusting and how it was with Cleveland and Pittsburgh this Thursday. You want it to be grimy and dirty, and you want to say, hey, although my rushing offense is not as good as Green Bay's this year, if it can almost take away Jordan Love's impact on the game, that benefits San Francisco because right now, their quarterback's not really going to have an impact on the game at all. So you're almost begging and praying for snow. You don't want it to be sunny. You want it to be muddy and dirty and nasty and disgusting. You want to see Jordan Mason, Guerendo, Kyle Juszczyk, Kittle. You want this team to win a game like they won against the Washington in 2019, where it's muddy and they're sliding around because it's sloppy and gross and nasty. But ultimately, this is a team now with their back against the wall, fighting for their playoff lives without their starting quarterback. The odds are not in their favor. Football gods seemingly said, you know what? We're going to give you hell for 2024. But to some of you, that's kind of what you are wanting. Now, you don't want Brock to get hurt, but you do want this team to lose football games. the worse they are, the higher the draft pick they have. If this thing lingers for 1 to 2 weeks, and according to Kyle Shanahan again, Brock's shoulder didn't get any better. That's concerning. Like, I'm not here to say he tore something or something seriously injured, but the fact is, he couldn't throw a football almost all week. Now, I don't know about you, and look, I don't play in the NFL, but I've had shoulder soreness before. I had a thinned UCL, almost had Tommy John surgery. I could play baseball on that, and I did. Now, I'm not here to say I'm Brock Purdy and I know exactly what's going on in the building, but shoulder soreness, quote unquote, and you can't throw a football almost all week long, I don't think rest is the answer here. It to me feels like there's something more serious going on with Brock Purdy, and I hope that's wrong. I don't want to speculate, but when you hear it's only shoulder soreness, and then in the one time you see him practice this week, which to be fair, we get like an hour or two of viewing him during the week, during practice. He threw for like 20 to 10 minutes and like, hey, this ain't working. I'm done. And called and kind of was like, hey, end practice for me. I can't go. Cut it short. That's concerning. Now, maybe not for this year. Maybe you're in the camp like, hey, it's washed. 2024 is a wasted year. Okay, fine, whatever. But then you look at next year. And you look at, okay, how does this linger and play out for the rest of 2024? And does that affect the offseason, right? Brock's already had a UCL injury on his throwing arm. How serious is this? You have no idea. I don't think it's going to need rehab or whatever, or need surgery, but you never know, right? And if Brock does come back, say, for whatever reason, San Francisco wins this week, and Brock misses the game against the Bills in 2 weeks' time, and they're sitting at 6-6, and Brock comes back and gets hit again, could that lead to a more serious injury? Like, these are things that, although you don't want to look too far ahead here, do matter. You have to talk about, because if you can't throw all week and it's only shoulder soreness, like 1 and 1 don't equal 2 there. Some's mixed up in the in between. Like, something else is going on with Brock's shoulder. Now, they haven't had X-rays from what we've been told via Lynch and Shanahan, but the MRI came back clean. But that doesn't mean it caught everything. It doesn't mean there isn't a joint issue or, Jimmy Garoppolo, he had a shoulder injury. He played through it. His shoulder was torn. Okay, well, maybe in their minds, okay, let's not risk Brock getting further injured this week and getting back next week. That's fine too. But again, my point is, if Jimmy Garoppolo's playing through a shoulder injury late in 2021 to save his job, and then having to have surgery late in the year, Brock can't play through shoulder soreness. Okay, well, that means to me it's not shoulder soreness. This is, to me, a more serious problem. But again, fingers crossed I'm incorrect here. I would love to be wrong here in my speculation, because it's not great. This is bad for San Francisco wholeheartedly. Like, in a year where it was the final dance and the last dance for this roster, and Ward could be gone, Hufanga could be gone, Greenlaw's on a contract year, Banks could be gone. Banks probably should be gone. Deebo Samuel could be gone. At the pay Brock Purdy, and this is the year to win the whole thing. You go out there and maximize this last year. It has become a complete and utter disaster. What a letdown. This team, arguably, and I think now more than ever, after losing to the Seahawks, I said they were closer to a top 10 pick than a playoff spot. With no Brock Purdy, that conversation is like concrete, put that sucker in stone, and it's going to take a miraculous effort by this defense to beat the Green Bay Packers. The Packers have a top 3 rushing offense. They have a quarterback that, despite some dumb mistakes here or there, is having a pretty good year, and a defense that, although has struggled sometimes, get takeaways. And I'm sorry, Brandon Allen. I don't know how much trust you have in the guy. I had very little in him. So it's concerning for San Francisco. This could be the end of the season for San Francisco. Again, the playoff odds go from, if they win, I believe they have a 46% chance to win if they win. And if they lose, 17%. Like, by all intents and purposes, this is the season. And you're not going to have Brock Purdy. You're not going to have Nick Bosa. You're not going to have Travis Ward. And at this point, why should Kittle even play? Why should Trent even play? Like, I don't want to say don't play, because, like, what does that mean? Like, what message does that send to the rest of the guys in the room as a leader? But if Kittle's a little banged up, I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, no, I'm okay. Like, hey, Eric Sauber, get in the game. Bray Willis, go out there and play. And I don't want to say that because it's a bad message to send, but honestly, like if you're a little banged up like Trent Williams, who is 36 years old, has a limp in his ankle, why play? Why risk further injuring yourself when you didn't have an entire offseason, didn't have a training camp, and you walked in week one needing an IV halfway through that football game? Why play? His ankle's a ticking time bomb. Your quarterback that you are paid to protect ain't playing. Why should you play? And I think we will see in regards to how this team performs on Sunday, we will see in regards to how if Trent Williams actually plays and Kittle actually plays, what is this season for them? If those guys play, okay, they're bought in, they're ready to go, and they feel like they can still make some noise. But if Williams doesn't play, that is a clear-cut message. They don't believe in the season. They don't believe in the season. And that's okay in regards to saying, hey, look, man, like I'm 36, I'm 300 plus pounds. Like, I'm just going to take it easy this week. I'm going to rehab for a week and I'll get back out there in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, and make sure I'm fully healthy. When Brock plays, I play. Brock don't play in a meaningless game, well, who knows? But even then, this game isn't even meaningless. This game means everything, honestly. You have to win this football game if you want to go to the playoffs. But Bobo says here, and me and Bobo have been going back and forth on this yesterday and this morning and the afternoon. They say that the season's over for sure, and it's over as long as Kyle Shanahan is still the head coach. Well, I talked about this yesterday, and I put the clip back out this morning on the YouTube channel, so like, share, subscribe, and check the video out that I posted early this morning. San Francisco is not firing Kyle Shanahan. I don't believe in that. But in a year like this where everything's going wrong, like honestly, if I asked you, and if you know something, comment down below. What's the one thing that's gone right this year for the San Francisco 49ers? Is it Jordan Mason? Is it Sam Aquanu? Is it the draft class? Okay. Well, that's led to 5 wins and a 500 record. I don't know how, like, amongst the pile of bad things, the good things by far do not outweigh them by any means. Right, Calachipto? Rookies look good. Mustafa's been great. Green's been phenomenal. Grando's had his spurts. Pooney looks like an all-pro this year, and he might as well be. But, yeah, I mean, I think that a game like this, we talked about coming into this one that they need more from Kittle and, well, I guess not even Kittle, from Deebo Samuel, from Pearsall, from CMC, from Jordan Mason, and if they can even play Mason, because Shanahan always said, doesn't want to play him a lot. But on a team that's paying all these players so much money, like Deebo's getting paid top dollar, Kittle's getting paid top dollar, Warner's getting paid top dollar. I don't know Bosa, but Floyd's getting paid a good chunk of change. Like Blake Collins getting paid like $10 million. Like, you got to have your guys step up. Now, you can't really prevent injuries. That's the unfortunate part. Like, are you getting hurt and Williams being hurt and Kittle was out last week and now Brock's injured? You can't prevent those things. But in a game where your season's on the line and your backup quarterback's in, you need all-pro Deebo Samuel. And I'm sorry, the odds we see all-pro Deebo Samuel in week 12 of the NFL season after a really bad first 11 weeks, very slim. Like, the faith I have, despite being part of the Niner faithful, is very little right now. And I hate feeling that way, but what as fans are we being sold and told to buy into? Brandon Allen? Okay, fine. I mean, that's not something I'm fully like. I don't even want the backup quarterback to start. I want the third string quarterback to start in this game. So, not really much there for me to buy into. You're going to need more from Christian McCaffrey. 3.4 yards ain't going to cut it, right? You need to have the classic CMC game. The offensive line has to play darn near perfect now to actually help them win football games. And this is going to be a dogfight, slugfest, slobber knocker to the finish in regards to running the football. Well, I mean, the odds don't favor San Francisco either. Do you trust San Francisco's offensive line led by Jake Brendel and Colton McKivitz and Aaron Banks, and potentially if Williams doesn't play, Jalen Moore to power you to victory? I don't. Not at all. You got Pooney. Right guard is great, but if Trent don't play, then 4 of the 5 guys become the problem. And at that point, you're almost having to play Kittle as that 6th offensive lineman, the inline tight end. And at that point, then you're limiting the offense even further. Like, I have a hard time believing San Francisco wins this football game. I said yesterday, 27-23 Green Bay wins. I'd be shocked if San Francisco scores 13 points. And I hate saying that. Like, could the Niners win this football game? Yeah, they can. It's the NFL. The Browns beat the Steelers last night in the snow in Cleveland, right? You've seen teams like the Panthers win a couple games this year. The Jets, for as bad as they've been, have won some football games this year. The Giants with Daniel Jones beat the Seahawks this year. Anything can happen. But it is going to take a masterclass from Kyle Shanahan. It's going to take all the star players you're paying big money to having down years to finally round back into form in 1 week's time. That's almost impossible. We talked last night about the personnel being an issue for San Francisco. Well, you lost your most important player overnight, it feels like. And yeah, so you didn't got Nick Bosa. That's going to affect your defense. How to get a pass rush. You were essentially giving Jordan Love a free lane to throw the football all the time. And if not going to get any pressure on him, there's an odd. This is the first game this year. He doesn't throw a pick. And if he's not going to give you a turnover, you ain't getting the ball back. Like, the Packers are going to have these long, sustainable drives because, well, your defense is going to be on that field consistently, unless something changes for San Francisco. Like, one of the issues we've seen is that San Francisco's defense is really good in the first quarter and slowly kind of tapers off as the game goes by. If you're the Niners, you're almost begging to get the ball first. You're almost begging to. That way, you just run, and hope you can get some first downs and milk that clock. Just milk that clock. Like, all the way down. Like, you are essentially playing keep away. You almost want to treat this game like you would against Patrick Mahomes, right? As long as he doesn't touch the football, we have a chance. Do what the Raiders did against the Mahomes last year. If we don't give him the football and milk the clock and have these, 15-play, 8-minute drives, even if you get a field goal, that shortens the game so much, but it just feels like you got to pull tooth and nail to actually have that happen because San Francisco, unlike previous years, can't even run the football. Cowachito says here, I bet it's 35 plus to 6, that being the Packers have over 35 points to the Niners 6 points. There's a real chance Jake Moody leads this team in points on Sunday. Not fun. And let's be honest here, it's Jake Moody. He may also miss 3 field goals as well. So not fun. Cowachito also says he has Josh Allen throwing 2 to 3 picks and Josh Jacobs running for 150 plus yards. Yeah, this is a great day for a person like myself. Well, not a great day, but fantasy-wise, I have Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs, and Jaden Reed. I am stoked right now. I am stoked right now that Brock Purdy's not playing. I am overjoyed that my 9-2 fantasy team is probably going to be 10-2 by the end of the week. And I hate saying that because it's a really, really bad thing. It's terrible. Marv Red Wolf, first off, great name. Love the name. Says, CMC be a better quarterback than Brandon Allen. Honestly, Marv, you're right. Now, let's not disparage Brandon Allen too much. He's in the NFL. He backed up Joe Burrow, backed up Purdy and Darnold last year, backed up Purdy all year long. It's just, there is a steep drop-off from, like, in previous years, you weren't really too scared if Jimmy G went down when he missed so much time, but Shanahan has a knack for getting the most out of backup quarterbacks. Beathard, Nick Mullins, at time Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, for example, in 2022. He has a knack for getting the best out of those quarterbacks, whereas But that's when those offenses are humming, they're clicking. Guys are 2 to 3 years younger than they are now. Everything's working. You can run the football. Like Shanahan can almost protect them and give them like 18 passes a game. As long as you hit 12, we're going to be okay, right? Whereas now your star quarterback is having trouble seeing the field and also even getting time to throw, and no one's getting open. Like if I'm the Packers, 8 in the box every single play, 8 in the box, because I'm going to force Shanahan to have to beat me with Brandon Allen. This is like DEFCON 5, whatever the worst one is. Like, and even to Marv Redwell's point of CMC being a better quarterback than Brandon Allen, CMC's not been great through the 2 games he's played, and rightfully so. I mean, man, like, I get it. He was injured, and I'm okay giving CMC time to get healthy and work himself back in. But almost, it's like this is a point in time where you're like, is it even worth playing him? You put Jordan Mason out there, you put Grendo out there, and you use CMC as a receiver to help you out in man coverage, maybe to make and force Green Bay to not stack the box against you. Maybe that's an option for San Francisco, but it is going to take, again, a perfect game plan from Kyle Shanahan. Now, let's give Shanahan credit, and I know Bobo hates doing this. Maybe he's known the entire week this was going to be the case. Maybe he knew from the beginning this was going to be, his quarterback all week long. Now, I think they tried to get Purdy healthy, but ultimately, I'm pretty sure Kyle knew, hey, Brock's not good to go. It's going to be a tough one, Kyle. Maybe to give Kyle some credit, maybe he knows, hey, I was going to have Brandon Allen play quarterback all week. And funny enough, like, no one has talked about how good or bad Brandon Allen's been during practice all week. It's all been Brock Purdy, which makes sense. That's the main story you want to tell, but we have no idea how Brandon Allen has looked all week long. Now, I was there at training camp this year and last year. I've seen Brandon Allen live, where some and most haven't. And Brandon Allen has outplayed Trey Lance. That means nothing, mind you. Brandon Allen has outplayed Joshua Dobbs at times. He knows the offense extremely well. He's been in a Shanahan offense for multiple years with Zach Taylor in Cincinnati and now in San Francisco. Like, it's not like Brandon Allen gives you nothing. He just gives you very little. And unfortunately, could backfire. Like, I was having a conversation on Twitter today of like, I would start Joshua Dobbs because despite maybe the cavernous drop off he can give you with 3 or 4 picks and a fumble, there also is a starting caliber quarterback in there at times. There's flashes here or there. Last year with the Vikings, there were some really good things and some really bad things. And even with the Cardinals last year, beat the Cowboys, who were a good team last year, till late in the season. So I don't know what the decision-making was there for Kyle Shanahan, but ultimately, not going with Joshua Dobbs, going with Brandon Allen, and Brandon Allen is a game manager. He's not going to give you more than that. And unfortunately, with the team, with the way the team is currently playing, you really can't win games with a game manager. Like, Brock Purdy has been so great this year. Like, when the team is in games late, even against Seattle, he threw a pick. It was a bad pick, but he managed that game. He wasn't turning over left and right. Even against the Bucs, it was close all game, right? He wasn't, turning the ball over here or there. He was managing the football game. But the way they played against the Seahawks, which may have been arguably the worst they played all year outside of the Chiefs game, but even that Chiefs game, Ayuk gets his knee snapped in half essentially, and Brock throws 3 picks in the red zone. They played better against Kansas City than against Seattle last week. Like, they played their worst football game all year last week. A game manager ain't saving that. Even if Brandon Allen throws for $180 with no touchdowns and no picks, it is going to be so hard to overcome the odds of no Ayuk, a limited Christian McCaffrey, unless he busts out, which could happen. No Brock Purdy now, maybe no Trent Williams, and no Travis Ward. You have a run defense that has struggled all year long. Like, this really is a catastrophe. And Bobo says here in the YouTube comments, that Niners are the most disappointing team in the league because of how much they cost, from the GM, the head coach, and players. If Kyle didn't choke against the division, we could have had a throwaway game. That goes back to my point earlier, Bobo. Yes, that had San Francisco beaten the Rams early, had they beaten the Cardinals early, even if they had beaten the Seahawks last week, okay, Brock's banged up. He misses one game. The game against the Bills doesn't really matter that much as long as you beat the Rams and the Cardinals later in the year. But unfortunately, and this is their own doing, the Niners are putting their playoff hopes, their season on the line. They're putting it in the other team's hands. They're putting it on Seattle to beat the Cardinals. They're putting it on the Eagles to beat the Rams, which both those things can happen. But at a certain point in time, a team this good needs to grab the bull by the horns and take over. Okay, we're in control of our own destiny. San Francisco this year has been in control of their own destiny all year long, and they've blown it. They fumbled it, right? Now, when they need it most to be in control of their own destiny, they're banking on bad teams like Seattle to beat the Cardinals, who have been really good this year. The defense is playing better. Kyler's playing great football. All of you dunked on me when I had Kyler inside my top 10 quarterback ranking. Look at me now. Kyler's playing great. I said the Niners would split with the Cardinals in the preseason, albeit I had the year going differently record-wise for both those teams. I'm not shocked in regards to how good the Cardinals are, but the Niners are putting their playoff hope and fate in the hands of the Seattle Seahawks and Geno Smith and DK Metcalf and a good Eagles team to beat the Rams, but it's Stafford, McVay, and company. They can beat the Rams or the Eagles. Like, this is not where you want to be already, even if you had Trent and Kittle and Ayuk and Purdy healthy. But now half those guys are out for either the year or the week, and you're still in a bad spot. Like, the Niners have completely botched this season. They know it. I think this is a good litmus test in regards to how much Brock Purdy's actually worth. Because if this game is close, like say at the end of the game, it's like 24-16. It's 24-17. It's a one-score game. Well, then the entire conversation becomes, if you had Brock, which then leads me to saying that it'll give them more of a, I guess you can say, a reason to pay Brock Purdy the record-breaking contract he'll get. Bobo says here in the YouTube comments that I was so happy when we hired Kyle. Now I cringe at the thought of him being here for years to come. Why do people hate Kyle so much? I get this year has been bad and they've lost 2 Super Bowls, but like that, and Bobo, I love you. You're always in here and I really appreciate you. But like, what? Like, man, like there ain't no way I'd feel that way. Like, Kawachito says here, whiners. And look, like this is the NFL. This happens during seasons, right? I mean, last year, almost every quarterback got hurt. Like the Bengals right now are in limbo and they're paying Burrow. They're going to pay Chase and they got T. Higgins. Like they thought this year was going to be their year to get back into the fray. They're a disaster. That defense ain't very good. They're paying guys high money. Probably going to fire their head coach after the season, get a new one. Like the worst thing San Francisco could do, and it won't happen, but you fire Kyle Shanahan and he goes to Cincinnati. You give him Joe Burrow. Watch out, Lamar. Watch out, Mahomes. You're giving Kyle the best quarterback he's ever had. But that's not going to happen. Bobo says here, I won't say the word, but Kyle poops on himself in the biggest moments of the biggest games every time, every year. I'll push back on that. And while, yes, there has been these pivotal moments in Shanahan's tenure where you just shake your head and go, Kyle, what are you doing, right? Both Super Bowls. If you want to go back to 2016 with the Falcons against the Patriots, although he wasn't the head coach, he didn't make Tart drop the pick against the Rams. He didn't make Jimmy miss a wide open Emmanuel Sanders in the Super Bowl deep downfield late. There's moments even last year where he didn't make Burford with that block on a unblocked Chris Jones and a defensive back. Like, yes, there are things that Kyle can improve upon as a head coach and a play caller, but some things are personnel issues. A lot of this year, and don't get me wrong, Kyle deserves blame for this because he is responsible for putting this team together, right? Kyle, the GM, is getting in the way of Kyle, the head coach. So in those big moments we point to of like, well, that happened and this happened and that's because Kyle, the GM, gets in the way of Kyle, the head coach and play caller. Like, imagine it last year if it was Dominic Pooney playing right guard compared to Burford and Feliciano. We'd all say, oh, like San Francisco's probably hosting a trophy at the end of last year, right? It's like what it comes down to. Like, imagine if it was, go back a few years, imagine if it was Creed Humphrey and not Jake Brendel playing center. They're in a much better place this year. For all the faults that Shanahan has, though, done a lot of great stuff for this organization, right? Drafted Purdy, whiffed on Lance, but drafted Brock Purdy, got Kittle, Greenlaw, Warner. This year, Mustafa, Reed, Pooney, Garendo. Hopefully, Pearsall next year looks even better than what he's shown so far. Went and traded for Trent Williams for nothing, essentially. There has been so many good things Kyle has done that because they've been so successful, because they've been so good, it makes those little things that cost them big moments so much bigger. It magnifies all of the bad things because the expectations are there and they've done so many other great things right. It's the really minute details they've whiffed on that have cost them a championship or a Super Bowl. As Bobo says here, as good as you make Kyle out to be, where's the ring? Well, let me ask you this, Bobo, and I don't disagree with you. Kyle has been so great up to a point, and that point has been in Super Bowls. You're right there. I can't argue with you there. Can I ask you this, though? Where's Zach Taylor's ring? John Harbaugh hasn't won a ring since, 2011 against the Niners? Is that the year it was again? It's been over a decade for him. Where's Mike Tomlin's ring since that game against the Cardinals, right? It's not like we're seeing different head coaches every single year win. It's Andy Reid's on a three-peat or trying to get there. It was McVay who went to two of them, one with Stafford and one with Jared Goff. It's Belichick a lot of times. It's not like there's been a continual, carousel of coaches winning rings. It's a really small chunk of head coaches and teams that have been uber successful, kind of vying for the top spot. So I get it. There are definitely qualms to have with Shanahan. I totally get frustration. This year has been a hard one to kind of watch and live through because they're 5-5 and the expectation was Super Bowl. And all of it really stems from, like, all of the issues we have with Kyle stem from pre-Niners tenure and the two big losses in San Francisco's tenure. But even then, like, you can complain about play calling all you want. Even this year alone, go back and watch that tape. Even Johnny Dells, great guy, does great breakdowns on YouTube. He'll tell you that, yeah, there's going to be some Kyle Shanahan problems here or there, but it's mainly a personnel problem. Backup tight ends missing blocks because Kittle isn't playing, Brendel and Banks and McKivitz missing blocks, and Purdy missing an open Debo and not seeing Pearsall, and Debo not getting open. Like, a lot of it's personnel problems, not play calling problems. But now you're adding in this game no Brock Purdy. Like, you could argue that the season's over with. Like, there is a real conversation to be had of the season already felt like it was lost, and now it feels like you're never going to find it. And for a team that was banking on bouncing back, you pay Trent, you pay CMC, you pay Brandon Ayuk, you redo Debo's contract, you pay for durable players, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd. Funny enough, the players in previous years that were banged up, you tried to replace with durable players like Floyd and Collins, That's worked out. It's the other guys like Purdy and Ayuk and now Nick Bosa and Trent Williams that are all banged up. And you're like, well, I can't replace those guys. Like, give me a break here, which is why I firmly believe that a year like this is almost needed for San Francisco. The last time San Francisco lost in the Super Bowl, they had a terrible 2020 season, right? Terrible, 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 terrible. That led them to drafting Trey Lance, which in itself was a bad pick. No one can argue that. Can't even beat out Cooper Rush for the backup quarterback job in Dallas, mind you. But they get a high first round draft pick, which they can miss on, they can hit on, but it means all their picks in every single round are going to be high picks. That means you have a better chance to get higher talent. It means you don't have January and February of these elongated seasons. You give the guys 2 extra months off to rest and recuperate. Maybe CMC's back fully healthy next year. Trent's older, but he's maybe has the entire offseason to work out and get ready. Greenlaw's back next year, hopefully. You have year 2 of the entire 2024 draft class. That's a great thing for San Francisco. Then you're going to add in, hopefully, a new wave of young talent to say, hey, we may have these aging vets, but we're going to have so many young, like insanely talented players around them that if they miss time, we can kind of be like the Eagles this year, right? Philadelphia this year went into the draft saying, you know what? We cannot rely on Darius Slay and James Bradbury and company to play in the secondary every game this year. Let's get 2 guys, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. And those guys had been locked down for them. They wouldn't paid for Saquon Barkley. Like, they had a year where they sat back and said, wow, we have to change things. We have to recalibrate our season. They went to a Super Bowl, had a down year, squeaked into the playoffs, and said, whoa, we had to make changes. Went to the offseason, made changes, were aggressive, got a great running back, 2 phenomenal young defensive backs, and they look great again this year, right? When they're healthy, they're a great team. When they're healthy, Philadelphia, I know we hate Nick Sirianni and company, but are having a great year. I think San Francisco, despite it not being fun to watch, despite it, being annoying and frustrating to know that, hey, another crop of great Niner players may never win a ring. If you can keep Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw and Brock Purdy and Nick Bosa and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Pearsall and Cowing and Trent Williams and Pooney, and like, the Niners really could walk into next year recalibrated, refreshed, and kind of souped up, ready to go again. Where CMC's there from day 1, week 1. Grendo's back into the organization as the RB2 or 3 behind Mason if he comes back next year. You have a restacked offensive line. Like, the really good thing about this year, despite it being terrible, is that there are pressing needs that are impossible to ignore. You cannot ignore how bad Jake Brendel's been any longer. You cannot say, well, Colton McKivitz can play right tackle for us next year again. No, you can't. You cannot pay Aaron Banks again. 2nd round pick who is good at times, but has been terrible this year. You can't do it. You cannot bank on Devondre Campbell and D. Winters and Bethune and Jalen Graham and all those guys being your number 2 linebacker. Your secondary is relatively set. Maybe you find somebody else. You can replace Yadam. Green's been better than Mooney Ward's this year. Like, you already paid Lenore. Your safeties are already set. Like, you're in a pretty good spot. Maybe add an edge rusher here or there. Like, you are not, despite as bad as it's been this year, San Francisco, with their entire draft picks ready to go, they're going to get compensation picks in free agency. Like, they could have like 11 picks next year, trade up here or there, and just restack this roster. And the entire league says, oh crap. Like, oh my God. And on the coaching front, Kyle's back next year, which Bobo will hate that. But see, I don't think so. As Bobo says here, next year, we'll still have Brian Schneider and Nick Sorensen, like Jake Brendel, like Colton McKivitz, like Devondre Campbell, and plenty of other places. I don't think you can ignore how bad special teams has been this year. Like Nick Sorensen, it's his first year. I think you have to give him a year or two unless Jeff Ulbrich or Robert Saleh are open to returning. Those are the two candidates where you're like, yep, if those guys will come, goodbye Sorensen. I'm cool with that. But Brian Schneider, you cannot ignore how bad he's been, how bad his unit has been. Shanahan doesn't like firing coaches middle of the year. I know I've said it, fire Brian Schneider. I think he deserves to be fired. Kyle, I'm sure it took everything in his might to not fire Steve Wilkes during the season last year. He waited all the way until the end, then he fired him. That move was coming no matter what happened. Had they won, had they lost at all, he was gone no matter what. Brian Schneider is in that Steve Wilkes conversation, or kind of in the same group as him, of like, hey, I'm not going to fire you during the year, albeit maybe I should. I'll wait until the season's over with, then say goodbye. And if Kyle doesn't, whether I'm Grant Cohn or I'm Eric Branch or I'm Jennifer Lee Chan, Matt Miyoko, that is my first question at the end of the year press conference. Hey, Kyle, your special teams ranked 31st out of 32, and I would list all these stats, and it's like, why is the coordinator still here? Make Kyle answer the question, because it's hard to ignore. It's really hard to ignore. Now, in regards to this year and this Sunday, the Niners, even when they were healthy with Brock Purdy, I thought they were going to lose. But to quote Steve Wilkes again, like last night, are you built for this? Are you tough enough? Can you push back? We want to talk about, we dug ourselves a hole and now we got to keep swinging. Okay. Are you going to continue to fight, or are you going to give in and succumb to another bad year? Is this their 2020, and can next year be their 2021 and on and on? But, this year alone, like, we are going to see exactly what this team is made of. No Brock Purdy. Can they somehow gut this out? The odds, not in their favor. I would say they can't. They probably couldn't even with Brock Purdy out there. But can CMC step up? Can Mason step up? Can Kittle step up? Is Trent Williams actually going to play? Can Debo pull his head out of his rear end and start making all-pro plays again? They need all that to happen, to transpire. And it's not like the season, despite it being bad, it isn't lost, really. It feels that way for sure. But the season's not over. It's week 12, and they're 5-5. Now, that said, they are the 10th seed in the NFC playoff picture. They are, 2 games behind the Commanders for the 7th seed, I believe. Like, they're not in a great spot. They're 1.5 games behind the Cardinals for the NFC West lead. This game, the season feels over with. The odds are it's over with. Yes, Bo, I get it. It feels over with. No Brock. If it's serious, then yeah, it's over with. But in my mind, that little faint thread of hope where you're like, well, maybe. Well, if they can do this and then they can do this better, there's a chance. Which, you don't want to be too doom and gloom, but if I have to be honest with you, there really is, like, if San Francisco somehow pulls this out, you can lose against the Bills, whatever. 6-6. You still have games against the Rams and the Cardinals left to go. Games against the Bears still. Like, you can realistically, if you win this game, despite it not being maybe favorable for them, this game would go a long way into finding yourself back in the playoff hunt. It really would. And even then, like, if you lose this week and next week, if you get some help in the Cardinals and Seahawks and Rams all lose, like, you're not out of it yet. It all depends on how long Brock's going to be out, to be honest with you. Like, if Brock's out for 4 weeks, call it a night. Put in Josh Dobbs, play all the rookies, and it's call it a day. Jalen Moore can play, Pearsall Cowling, and Ronnie Bell can start for all I care, right? Go bring Cam Latu back if Brock's out for the next month, and let Cam Latu play for the next 4 weeks. I don't care. But statistically speaking, It ain't over till it's over. Now, realistically speaking, it might be over, but I don't know. This season is weird. Every single game, you could realistically say San Francisco should win. Even Michael Gillum right here says Niners are going to beat the Packers. That's the optimism we need. Maybe it's blind faith, Michael, but I get it. I'm with you, and I want to be in the boat and car you're driving. I want to be there. I don't believe you, but I want to be there with you. And wouldn't it be funny if the Niners, of all the games this year, win this one, right? And I will say this: that of the teams they've played, the Packers are a good team, 7-3 so far. They do leave the door open a lot. Like Jordan Love has thrown a pick every single game. Sometimes the offense is really consistent. They're reliant on explosive plays. Like, I know Purdy's out, but there is some wiggle room where if the defense plays great football for 3.5 quarters, the Niners could realistically win this game. And that sounds weird saying, and I don't want to say that because it doesn't feel right at all. But I would just say that don't give up hope just yet. Just be very reluctant to buy into them actually winning this football game. But I'll be there watching on Sunday. I'll be there ready to go to talk to you guys after the football game. Hopefully it's a Niners win. And honestly, if they win and Purdy isn't out for too long, we are back on that boat. We are back on the bandwagon. Right now, we're like a 10% chance of getting back on. 90, 1 foot off. The other foot's kind of like dangling on, barely still on that fence. We're kind of ready to say, oh, okay, call it a night, wrap it up, close up shop. But if they win, you never know. And honestly, even if San Francisco doesn't win and the Cardinals lose and the Rams lose, no harm, no foul. You're in the exact same spot you were coming into the week than you were leaving the week. Now, it's not where you want to be, but this, we can talk about wild card all day long. We really should just be focusing on the division. The division is not good. San Francisco hasn't been good. The Rams haven't been good. The Cardinals have been better, but they haven't really been great. The Seahawks are fine. They're not great either. There's a realistic chance that if Purdy misses the next 2 weeks, and you have the Rams and the Cardinals and the Bears, they could finish 8-9 somehow and win the NFC West if they get tiebreakers. That's still a possibility. Deborah here, thank you so much, Deborah, for chiming in here. Really appreciate you. Says, I never understood how come Dobbs isn't the backup. He is my choice. Higher potential. Put Isaac Grundo in. More explosive. To your last comment, yes. 3-man rotations. I don't care if Grundo gets 3 or 4 carries a game. Mason gets 6 to 8 and CMC gets 10. Let's get crazy with it. CMC in the slot. Be more creative. Use all 3 guys together. Use both guys together. Shanahan responded to a question, I think, from Larry Krueger about that and was like, yeah, it just depends on how the game's going. It's like, well, I mean, sure, but also no. you can decide when that plays out and whatnot. But I agree with you, Deborah. I don't get why you give Joshua Dobbs guaranteed money more than Brandon Allen and don't make him the quarterback too. I thought Joshua Dobbs was a better quarterback in preseason. Thought he showed you more with his legs. And in a game like this, where it feels like you're not going to have Trent Williams and you're not going to have Nick Bosa, and maybe you're not going to get what you hope from Debo and Kittle and company, wouldn't it pay to have a bigger-bodied, mobile quarterback that can escape some pressure, which the Packers don't provide much pressure, but this gives you a little something different back there? I think it'd go a long way. I mean, Joshua Dobbs doesn't suck. He's just not a great quarterback, but he can give you something else. Certainly higher potential. Lower floor, but a lot higher potential. But, I mean, man, it's hard to be optimistic in a year like this, right? You can go back to the offseason, like February all the way to now. It feels like it's been hit after hit after hit. And they're not letting up. You lose against Seattle, okay, you go to Green Bay, hope you can bounce back. Oh, now your quarterback's out. And you're like, oh, For how long? We have no idea. We have no idea. It could be a week, it can be 2 weeks, it can be a month, it could be the whole year. When you hear that the quarterback of your team had an MRI and it went pretty well according to John Lynch, and then he doesn't play because he can't throw the football all week long, that's concerning. That usually doesn't go away in a week. That, like, to me, it's like there's something serious going on, and I hope it's not too serious. I hope they can figure something out for Brock Purdy because it's not been great. It feels like the season's at a tipping point, and if it isn't now, it will be in the next 2 weeks. And if it already hasn't happened, well, you're 5-5. You fall to 5-6. Your season, although isn't over, certainly feels like it's about to hit rock bottom. Like, is it wrong that I wanted to say it hit Brock bottom? I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. But yeah, just not a great day for San Francisco Niner fans. Not a fun year so far for them. Downplay from superstars. It really does feel like that, Brock, like there's a real possibility that we don't see Brock the rest of the year if it is as terrible as I'm making it out to be, which maybe it's not. Maybe it's not. And of course, you get optimistic fans like Mike, which I love you, Michael. I'm happy you're in here trying to give us some hope. But you're going to need stars to play up. Like in previous years, like in the past week, they've had T.O., Steve Young, and Jerry Rice call this team out saying, hey, where are the stars at? How tough are you? Pick up the pieces, folks. That'd be my kind of, okay, you got stars that are Hall of Famers that have won Super Bowls calling you out. Now your team needs you the most. Are you going to fold? You going to step up? So what? You're banged up. So are the Chiefs. So are the Lions. So are the Packers. So is everybody else. Nobody cares. There is no sympathy for the devil. And to many people, the Niners have been the devil to them. So no one cares you're hurt. No one cares. Deborah asks here, Purdy got hurt trying to win against Seattle. Do you agree? I'm not exactly sure when Brock got hurt. It may have been because of the diving touchdown early in the game. I don't think we got a clear indication or answer as to when it happened or when it transpired during the game, but undoubtedly he got hurt during that game. I don't know when though, but yes, Brock got hurt against Seattle. Didn't happen during practice. It didn't happen on the plane ride home from or wherever. Yeah, so I would agree, but I don't know exactly where it happened. Michael asks here, did I see T.O. call out Debo? Yes, I did. Do I agree with what exactly T.O. said? And I'll read it to you here in a second if I can find it on my phone. Here, I'll bring it up right now. I don't know if I agree with it directly, the exact words that were used by Terrell Owens, as he says here. Debo's not really playing up to Debo standards. Debo seems like he's more focused on his pregame attire than he actually is the game. If we can shift that focus, maybe that can energize and create more production from an offensive standpoint. I say that tongue-in-cheek, though. I love a Hall of Famer that played here for a long time. Very successful player, mind you, albeit kind of the pot calling the kettle black in regards to Debo calling out Debo. Or T.O. Yeah. Like, dude, like, really, T.O.? Like, you're the one to say anything. But if anyone knows what off-field distractions are, it's Terrell Owens. But I loved it. This team has seemed unfocused all year. You could never really put your finger on it. Maybe it was injuries and contract discussions and whatever it may have been. This team needs a wake-up call. And maybe it is Brock getting hurt to be that. You would hope it wouldn't have to get that far. You would hope it wouldn't need to be Jerry Rice and T.O. calling out Debo and the stars of the team saying, play better, stop wearing your chains, and focus on playing football better. But honestly, like, this is what 2024 has come to. Terrell Owens calling out Debo Samuel. But I love that stuff because Debo is the first person to call out other teammates, which is great. Accountability is what you want, but like Debo, you're a star player, supposed to be this team's best offensive weapon, not named Christian McCaffrey, and you are playing worse than a newly extended, mind you, 7th-round pick. Like, that ain't gonna cut it on any team. And I wouldn't be shocked if post June 1st, next offseason, and it's like, hey, who wants Debo Samuel? Ha ha ha. Because he's played that bad this year. But maybe it's no Brock. We finally get, like Mike says here, an angry Debo Samuel of, okay, I got to pick up the pieces. I got to run angry. I got to be like Nicolas Cage, hashtag drive angry from 2008, straight to DVD. I got to pick things up here, right? So maybe that's the case. Maybe it takes Brock Purdy getting hurt and Tio calling him out for a new, it improved and re-energized Debo Samuel. And then Bobo coming in here with these statements like this, man. Come on. Why? Why? like I pride myself on trying to be the most even keel, like not too emotional person in regards to how the team plays and whatnot. And sometimes you can't help it, but Brock not hurt, just making excuses for losing 5 times. No. Brock Purdy played through a cracked rib on a short week to win the division. They didn't have to play that game. They didn't have to win that game. There are plenty of games left to play that season. And, like, no. If Brock can't play, he's legitimately hurt. And to me, that's concerning. Like, more concerning than, oh, Brock quit on the team. He didn't quit on the team. It's just, hey, I can't throw. Like, Brock played in a game in which he tore his UCL and was trying to warm back up in the NFC Championship game against the Eagles. Brock's a gamer. Like, the one thing I won't question is that Brock's going to give everything he has, whether it's diving, whether it's head first. Like, you could take away Brock's ACLs. He'll say, Coach, I'll go back out there. I'll play with no legs at all. Like, give me stilts. Give me the robot legs, whatever it takes, Coach. That's Brock Purdy. Like, Brock Purdy's a gamer. Bobo says here again, I have no hope, Sterling. Kyle has taken that from me. How? Okay. How has Kyle taken your hope away when he's been to 2 Super Bowls, won the division multiple times, done things that previous head coaches couldn't do in San Francisco? Even Jim Harbaugh couldn't beat Seattle in Seattle. Shanahan is owned the Seahawks with Pete Carroll or not. Owned them. Owned the Rams minus 1 important game. Like, I think there's hope with Kyle Shanahan. I just think that the NFL ebbs and flows, man. Ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're great for 3 or 4 years, which is why it's important to win when you're good. Winning last year would have gone a long way. We all would have forgiven this year, or at least not has been as harsh on it had they won last year. But Kawachipto says here, Debo has no lateral movement. Hard to disagree. Debo, for as explosive as he is like one of the slowest players in the league at times. Boo turned off, I think is what your name is. Great name. Says, I think it's BS too. I'm assuming you're referring to Purdy's injury. Okay. Why do you think it's BS? Like, do you think Brock's faking it? Do you think the team is like, hey, shut it down? We can't make Brock look too bad. We lost 5 games in a row off his worst game of the season. They're making an excuse because Brock didn't play well because they're going to pay him big money in the offseason. I mean, that just seemed like that's like going out of your way to make your life harder. And if you beat the Packers, you make your life easier. Like, I have a hard time believing that the Niners are faking or hiding Brock Purdy when, like, it doesn't make sense. Gold-Blooded says here, yes, the season is over, period. The end. Greenlaw should have should just stay gone for the season. I don't disagree with you there, albeit I think him playing the last 2 games of the season may help. Don't forget, even if San Francisco loses, they can still somehow be in this thing. Just the way things have gone this year for them. Gold Blooded says here as well, why would a guy playing for a long-term contract fake an injury? Get real. Exactly. Like Brock wants to make $65+ million. Why would the Niners or Brock Purdy be like, Coach, my arm's kind of tired. I can't throw in what is now the biggest game of the season? Like, that doesn't make sense. Like, they're going to pay Brock no matter what, but you're going to pay Brock off a shoulder injury? I don't know. It's 2 arm injuries in 3 seasons as a starter. Like, that's really doesn't give you hope. It gives you more concern. Thus, I don't think Brock or San Francisco are hiding or faking anything. I think this is completely just I can't throw, which in itself is worrisome and scary, but I don't think there's anything nefarious happening. And if there is, then my God, like get a grip, Kyle and John and company. But I don't think that's the case. What else do we have here? Deborah asks, who stepped up against Seattle? CMC, Juwan Jennings, Purdy. That's why Purdy got hurt. Guys need to protect Purdy. Kyle needs to be fired, get Bill. What's up with the fire Kyle Shanahan? Now, I do think there is credence to getting Bill Belichick. They tried. They certainly tried to bring in Bill in some capacity during the offseason, but Bill said no. That said, like, I don't know, like the offensive line, yes, guys need to protect Brock Purdy. Yeah, Jake Brendel. Yeah, Colton McKivitz. Yeah, Aaron Banks. And even Trent Williams, for as good as he's been his entire time in San Francisco, not as good as he was last year. He's 36 with no offseason. He ain't been the Hall of Famer this year. He hasn't been. It's been Pooney and a B+ Trent and then a C- and Dean and that everywhere else on the offensive line. So yeah, you protect Brock, you'll win football games. Michael Gillum asks here, so what do you think the score this Sunday will be? Pre-Brock injury, I said 27-23 Green Bay. Post-Brock being ruled out, I think it'll be... I think San Francisco's defense comes to play. So I'll say still 27 for Green Bay. I think San Francisco will score 16 points. So 27-16 Green Bay. I think that's fair to both teams. Magnet fishing in Mafia Land. First off, great name. Love it. Second off, he says, if we're trying to win, Joshua Dobbs should be starting. I agree. Part of me feels like that Kyle has had Brandon Allen in the system for 2 years now. He trusts him more than Joshua Dobbs, which is so odd because they gave Dobbs more money than Allen. But I think Allen operates in the system more. I think that, like, in a perfect world, which we don't live in one of those this year and never will, like if Ayuk was healthy and Debo was who he was last year and CMC is who he was last year, okay, start Brandon Allen, fine. The system is working. You're running on full cylinders minus a quarterback. You can survive 1 week, right? You're having an all-pro Debo and an all-pro Ayuk and an offensive player of the year Christian McCaffrey and an all-pro Kittle and a Hall of Fame left tackle. Like, okay. But when you remove almost all of those pieces, like Trent's playing a little bit down this year. Ayuk's out for the rest of the season. Debo's not been great at all this year. Kittle's been phenomenal. But then it's like you're asking a backup quarterback to have to lift the room and lift the team up, which isn't what you want or ask them to do. You ask the team to pick them up. And that can certainly happen on Sunday. Kittle and Debo and Pearsall and Jennings can certainly do that. And Christian McCaffrey can do that. But it just hasn't been seen this year. It's been very much a three-man party on the offense. Or I guess four-man. It's been Purdy, it's been Pooney, been Kittle, and Juwan Jennings, and at times early Jordan Mason. It really has not been a full-fledged, offense that looks like how it has in previous years. So you're asking Brandon Allen to pick up your stars, and it needs to be the opposite. Hopefully it changes Sunday. Magnet fishing in Mafia land. Michael Gillum says his score prediction is 24-17 Niners. If the Niners score 24 points without Brock Purdy, maybe without Trent Williams, and they only scored 17 against the Seahawks with Purdy and with Trent, I am going to drive myself all the way to Green Bay. And I'm going to yell in Kyle Shanahan's face. Like, my God, if that's what happens, and I hope it does, I am going to be so perplexed as to what are we watching this season? Because that makes no sense. Gold-blooded says here, anybody else notice whenever or wherever Dobbs goes as a backup, the starter gets injured? Told my boys that when he signed. Ben Roethlisberger got hurt. Kyler got hurt last year. He got traded to the Vikings because Kirk Cousins got hurt. I mean, I guess there's credence to that, but even then, okay, he has the experience to pick up the pieces at times. There's definitely been terrible games he's had last year, filling in for Cousins and whatnot, but Dobbs to me is more ready, more prepared to step in for a quarterback that gets hurt compared to Brandon Allen. I just don't have much faith that cohesively comes together. Leon Sandcastle, again, my favorite name in the entire chat. Allen is my least favorite quarterback on the team. I'd be more confident in Joshua Dobbs and low-key Tanner Mordecai, who has a lot of college experience. I don't have a lot of faith in Mordecai. Although watching him in camp and OTAs this year, there's certainly physical traits. I just don't like. To me, the game would be too fast for him. Yes, he has 5 years in college. Trying to think back to my scouting report of him when they picked him up. 5 years at Wisconsin, I think somewhere else before that. He's got the pedigree to be like a third string quarterback somewhere. Like if Joshua Dobbs wasn't here, you wouldn't love Tanner Mordecai, but you go, okay, young quarterback, got something there. But I don't know. It just Brandon Allen does what Kyle wants him to do. That's exactly what this is. Even go back and watch the preseason, which why would you at this point? But go back and watch the preseason. A lot of it is Joshua Dobbs off schedule, off the timing, doing his own thing. And I don't think Kyle loves that. Now, Kyle loves that if you can prove to play in the system and on time and stuff. Allen is more custom and more prone and more, I guess you can say, fits what Kyle wants to do more compared to what Joshua Dobbs does, which is more, I'm going to wing it. I'm going to run. I'm going to make plays with my legs and do things differently. I don't think Kyle loves that, especially from the backup quarterback. Like, Kyle hates that usually from a starting quarterback. Like, it really wasn't until now with Brock that he's like, yeah, I don't love it, but I'll live with it with Brock, and I'll praise him for it when it happens. But Kyle, even with his starters, is like, do what I say, and it's going to work. Blindly trust the system. I don't think Dobbs is that quarterback. I just don't. Gold-blooded says here, screens and runs all day to have a chance. Normally, I would say yes. This year, I would say no. This team can't even block a 7-step drop back or a pull run with the backup tight end. The end arounds aren't working. The screens aren't working. And for a team like Green Bay, who's probably should stack the box, you honestly might be better off taking a shot early with Pearsall or Jennings. Like, really, like, I don't think Cowing will play because of the concussion he got, but, like, take a chance. Take a shot early. Like, you might as well. What do you have to lose? the game, I mean, it's going to happen already, most likely. So, I mean, I don't think screens and runs, yes, not screens though. I think it'll hurt San Francisco in the long run. Michael says here, I think Allen will have a good game to win it for us. I know he'd been hearing noise about wanting Dobbs to start. Sure, I mean I don't know how much noise a backup quarterback hears. If the backup quarterback is listening that intently to social media, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know why you'd be doing that a lot, but yeah, I don't know. Like, if Brandon Allen's like, I'm going to prove to the fan base that Joshua Dobbs shouldn't be this team's backup quarterback, and I'm built for this, all power to you. It's a little funny to me, but that's just me. Gold Blooded says here, if Allen comes in and succeeds, I bet your ass the system talk will start again. It will. It will. I can guarantee you if San Francisco wins this game, even if Brandon Allen plays poorly, there's going to be a select few people, you already know who they are, that'll be like, see, Brock is not worth $65 million. Not worth it. Don't pay him. And you can have that opinion, fine. But this is the game that really shouldn't be the dictator of where that conversation goes. But yes, that will happen. Undoubtedly, that will happen. People will say, well, look, it's Kyle just doing his thing, and Brock couldn't beat Seattle, but Brandon Allen beat the Packers. And you're like, just shut up. You can not love Brock Purdy. That's fine. Do what you want. Do your thing. But to say Brock is not worthy of getting paid, or Brock is a system quarterback still after 2+ years of this phenomenal play, it just mind-bogglingly just like, like where do you get off at that point, right? Leon Sandcastle says here, I feel like scrambling's going to happen regardless with this offensive line. Allen is going to get drilled. Yeah, that's why you play Joshua Dobbs. Like, realistically thinking, again, said it many times already, in a perfect world, if you had all your weapons playing up to par, Brandon Allen's not a bad choice to play. Run the scheme, do what Kyle says, get in, get out, call it a day, run the football, win 21-17, 21-14, call it a day. Okay, fine. That's not what this year has been. The odds that Brandon Allen gets sacked like 5 times, I think, are really high. 1, because backup quarterback. 2, timing will be off here or there. 3, if it's Jalen Moore and not Trent Williams, like, you're just begging Allen to get lit up from his blind side. That's why you play Joshua Dobbs. He's a bigger quarterback, more mobile. He can break away from some sacks. And just a better playmaker in the backfield. Now, that's not what Kyle wants, but sometimes the last thing you need, sometimes the last thing you want is the one thing you need. And having a mobile, bigger body, playmaking quarterback, and why does it sound like I'm talking about Daniel Jones right now? I mean, it sounds like I'm talking about Daniel Jones, honestly, which that story is crazy. But Joshua Dobbs, I mean, just feels like this is a game, like, you signed him for a reason. And it's games like this that you signed him for, right? Brock's out. You had a whole week to prep for it. I said in preseason that if you have, like, Brock gets hurt in the middle of a game, then put Brandon Allen in. But if you have a week or two to prep, that is Joshua Dobbs' job wholeheartedly. Like, put him in. He'll give you something more than Brandon Allen can. But Kyle just seems like he always is, well, if my play calling is on par and if my personnel's doing their job, I can call the perfect game to help us win, which at times is very much true. But 2024 is so different than any year outside of 2020 in San Francisco. So yes, scrambling is going to be involved, especially if Trent doesn't play. Thus, Joshua Dobbs makes sense. Gold-Blooded says here, Have a great weekend, faithful. Hope I'm wrong about the loss, but go Niners. I think that's a great place to kind of cap off the show, right? Brock Purdy's not going to play this Sunday. It sinks. It sucks. It feels like this is maybe the end of the season. That this is kind of the cherry on top of the ice cream or the cake of like, oh, crap, now Purdy's out. This is kind of the end all be all. This is where everything kind of goes and ends and kind of tapers off. And we all say, yep, that was 2024, folks. See you in 6 months next year. That's when draft content comes out. The entire focus change. Okay, they have the 17th pick and the 14th pick and the 10th pick. How far can San Francisco go up the draft order? But I think there should be a little bit of optimism this Sunday. Hard to say how much. Maybe like 10%. I would still pick San Francisco to lose, and I'm hoping and begging that Brock Purdy's injury isn't long-term for his sake, for my sake mentally, obviously, and for the faithful and the team's sake, that Brock can be healthy. I think it's a little more serious than we think, but I do think and do believe that the Packers, unlike the Lions, unlike Philadelphia, I think the Packers are more beatable than those teams. If the defense can tighten things up a little bit, which, if you watched last night's podcast previewing the game, doesn't feel like that's going to happen. But if it does happen, San Francisco has a chance. They really do. Like, it feels weird betting against Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, and Kyle Shanahan. Like, that doesn't feel right to me, but it's where we are at this season. So yeah, I think that this, while directly doesn't end their season, if they win this football game, this is going to be the most meaningful game of the year. I think it could spark something in them that turns their season around. Brock's out. Step up, boys. Get ready to go. Gear up. We're going to war this Sunday against Green Bay. If they win this game, this is games that you look back to after a crazy stretch of play where they win 5 of the next 6 and you go, that's what kicked it off for them. I'm hoping that's the case. I don't think I'm right. I think it's not going to happen, but if they win this game, I do think it can spark something for them. I really believe that, but it comes down to executing. If you do your job, like Bill Belichick always says, do your job, San Francisco can win this game, oddly enough, even with the backup quarterback. Weird saying that, but it's true. It really is true. But time will tell. San Francisco and Green Bay kick off at 1:25 Pacific Standard Time at Lambeau Field. It may or may not snow. I hope to God it does. That now favors San Francisco in a big way, unlike if Brock Purdy was playing. Fingers crossed for a snow day at Lambeau Field this Sunday. And fingers crossed San Francisco wins. It's a must-win game. You cannot fall to 5-6. It isn't the end of the world, but you're inching closer to getting there and almost putting a pin in 2024, which I didn't think we'd be talking about pre-Thanksgiving this year. That feels crazy to say, but it's where we're at. Maybe it's for the better, but hope Brock can get healthy, get back to where he's been in previous weeks. I hope they can rest up, get healthy. Maybe somehow San Francisco turns on the Jets and turns their season around. Maybe. Maybe it's a Thanksgiving miracle if those actually exist. Who knows? Yeah, fingers crossed. I think San Francisco now loses 27-16. They fall to 5-6 this year. But join me after the game Sunday night when we react to what eventually happens in the outcome of Niners versus Packers. Thank you so much for watching, tuning in, whether it was Gold-Blooded, Leon Sandcastle, Michael Gillum, many others, Bobo, Deborah, Boo Turned Off, Kawachipto, many others in here as well. Who else? Marv Red Wolf, many of you in your Talking Niners. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Bobo says here, we're done, but I'll still watch Niners Access. That is just music to my ears, Bobo. Thank you so much for being loyal. Hope you leave that like, share, subscribe, leave that review on the audio podcasting platforms, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Thanksgiving is less than 1 week away. What? I'm going to be 28 years old in 1 week? What the heck? Life is flying by. The season's already halfway over. If you want to watch your Niners play this year, whether it's Brock Purdy or Brandon Allen or Joshua Dobbs, use that promo code 49ersaccess, 49 ERS ACC ESS at SeatGeek.com to save yourself $20 off your first purchase. And if you kindly could, follow us on social media. 49ers_access is the X or Twitter. 49ers.access is the Instagram. Dre Area Sports says, "What's up, Sterling?" Well, talking some Brock Purdy injury conversation, but that's the end of the show, Dre Area. Where you been? Hope you had a wonderful day doing your own thing on your own channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Dre Area Sports. There's great stuff over there. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your week. My name is Sterling Bennett. Like, share, subscribe, leave that review. And as always, even if San Francisco falls to 5-6 and the world starts to crumble and you hear myself yelling, "The sky's falling," like Chicken Little, stay faithful.